What's weather like in Portland? So we are in mid-June at the time of making this video, and as you can see behind me, it's actually unseasonably cold and cloudy for mid-June in the Pacific Northwest. So stay tuned to this whole video because we're going to go over what the 4 seasons bring, what you can expect when you arrive depending on the month or season, and stay tuned to the end because we're going to go over some tips and tricks of how to get through the winters and how to get through the summers here in the Pacific Northwest. All right, let's go in, start the coffee, put the fire on, and talk about the weather we have in our area. So before we start today's video, be sure to like and subscribe down below. And I'm a licensed Oregon and Washington realtor, so make sure to also sign up for my headhunters list. As you're making your move to the Portland, Oregon area, this will allow me to heat seek the perfect property for you. Let's start off with the 4 seasons that Oregon and Washington currently have. Start off, we have spring, which is usually a time of huge rainfall in our area. When we see the most amount of rain, it's when we see the most amount of snowfall over in the mountains. Your temperatures will fluctuate typically between really the low 40s in the winter up to the high 60s. But we have had snow in the springtime. There was one time where the cherry blossoms had already blossomed in our front yard, and we got a small dusting of snow. Spring is also when, for those of you who have allergies, Portland is just north of the grass capital of the world. We grow a ton of grass seed. So if you are prone to grass allergies, as I am, make sure to bring your allergy medicine. There's the nasal spray that really helps. But allergies, and especially the trees, the cotton, whatever it is that you're allergic to, there is a ton of pollen that comes up in the springtime. With all of that rain, we create a ton of green space. We have Forest Park in the West Hills. We have huge swaths of national forests and national parks, tons of places to recreate, and it's also why we have so many waterways. We're abundant with water because springtime equals rainfall and greenery, which lasts into the summertime, which is the second huge seasonal shift that we see. Now, typically, summer starts June 21st, but one thing to note is that on that turn, you actually have one of the longest days. Most people watching this video probably live south of the 45th parallel. And so we have summer nights that can last all the way up to, 9:30, and you can still see the last hints of the sunset going down. And on the flip side, during the winter, you will have a lot shorter nights, a lot more condensed. But during the summer months, you'll typically see the rain really starts disappearing around June. You'll have a couple more downpours, and then June hits, and you'll get into the drier months of July and August. Now, July and August is typically 80 or 90 degree weather on any given day, but we have seen temperatures all the way up to 115 degrees in recent time. I actually had a listing that it was an elderly couple, and they were getting ready to sell the home they had lived in for 43 years. And just as one of my added services, I went out and watered their roses during this record heat wave. They really cared about the roses, and I wanted to make sure that those puppies stayed watered. Now, during the summer is also a great time to go out and be on the water. We have tons of lakes and rivers in our area where people will go paddleboarding, kayaking, swimming. They'll take their dogs to the park. There are so many different waterways that you can go have fun, put a line in the water, put your boat on the water, just go and watch nature. So that is a huge attraction during the summer months. To transition into the fall time is when the colors really start changing. We have some pretty dramatic color shifts, and because we have so much greenery, that green turns all the oranges, browns. I don't know, is blue a part of fall? It's almost like trying to remember the rainbow, and I'm colorblind, so comment below the different colors of fall that you're familiar with. I guess yellow is another important one to remember. But the fall time just turns so beautiful, and it is really one of my favorite seasons because you get that nice cooler weather that the springtime has, without the allergies. So I love the fall because you have the rain coming back, and I'm a sucker for rain. I mean, I live in one of the highest rainfall major cities in the United States. I mean, if you look at all the rainfall charts, Portland's definitely amongst the higher end of the scale. And so the rain coming back in fall will replenish. You know, in July and August, a lot of people let their lawns die. Things do typically go pretty brown. So that's why I really like the rain, is because it comes back after a few months of really hot, dry, warm weather. I mean, I also like the fall because you have fireplaces come back. I'm a book nut, so reading, pulling out a book is a lot of fun. Just remember to stay tuned to the end of the video because I'm going to be going over a few hacks on how to deal with all the rain that you're really going to be seeing from fall all the way to spring. Which this leads us into the winter time. During the winter, people will ask, well, do I need an SUV or do I need an all-wheel drive vehicle in the Portland area? And the reality is, you need to be a fairly skilled driver because of the lack of good drivers in our area. And you might not need an all-wheel drive, but definitely having some beefy all-terrain tires is going to do you good. For just the amount of water that we see, you really want to make sure that your tires have enough of that tread to make it over all the puddles and stuff, so you're not aquaplaning, so you can brake in time if there's an accident ahead. The mountain is a beautiful place to go to, Mount Hood, during the wintertime. I went snowboarding a couple times into the early spring. And the thing with Timberline Lodge, we have 3 major ski and snowboard destinations up at the mountain. There's Ski Bowl, Timberline, and Mount Hood Meadows. But the thing with Timberline Lodge is not only does it have a beautiful historic lodge up there, where even if you're not a winter sport enthusiast, just go up there and bring a book, go grab a coffee up there, and just enjoy the views of being up at the peak. Normally the pass up there is fairly well maintained unless we're getting huge amounts of snow falling. So I would really encourage you to go up there during the winter time. But with Timberline Lodge specifically, it's on a glacier, so Olympic athletes will actually train there. It's the only resort that's open year-round for snowboarding and skiing because we've got that glacier that comes down in Timberline Lodge. So it's a cool fact. And Ski Bowl is America's largest night skiing place. Now, I would say that, generally speaking, Portland is kind of a city of not introverts per se, because we do have a lot of extroverted people. But people in Portland don't really mind staying indoors. We love our coffee shops. We love our pubs. And so when the rain and the cold come in the wintertime, and temperatures are dipping into the 30s and 40s many nights, we don't really mind cuddling up, reading a book, or just socializing with a small group of friends. Now that being said, with all the rain and stuff, the one thing to know about Portland winters and the rain in general is that Portlanders, generally speaking, you'll be seen as an outsider or somebody that hasn't really lived in Portland for that long if you walk around with an umbrella. I could be completely wrong. If you live in Portland or you're watching this from Oregon and you do use an umbrella, feel free to tell me down below. I'm not going to make fun of you. But the winters do tend to get cold. Now, they don't normally get cold enough to freeze. It's very rare that we get a combination of freezing and precipitation. And often, when we do, we'll actually get these dreadful ice storms that affect power. The trees will start cracking and falling, and so having huge trees around your property, especially ones that aren't well maintained or healthy, is a huge liability. You want to look out for when during doing a home inspection, or if you're getting a rental, make sure you're aware of that. But these ice storms that hit tend to really lock up traffic and close down schools. The one great thing about living in the Portland area is that when we do get snow, it's such a unique occurrence. It actually does create this winter wonderland. It's a little bit like Narnia. And so while everything's closed down, you actually have time to enjoy the snow. It's not like when I was in Maryland and it was kind of just this dreadful snow that had been sitting for months on end and people were just ready for the warm weather to come back and the humidity. So I don't know, I never necessarily looked forward to the different seasons on the East Coast, and that's because I wasn't really brought up on the East Coast. On the West Coast, I feel like every season brings something to look forward to. That's my personal bias, and it's why I live here and not the East Coast. Now, we don't have falls like Maine, so Maine does have that on us. As we transition out of the winter, we're obviously getting back into the springtime, and the rain will be continuing up until, like I said, the June timeframe. At the time of this recording, we're recording in early June, and we're actually getting a historic cold snap right now compared to the Northeast, which is seeing a huge heat wave. So if you're watching this right now from a hot or humid climate and you're in the Northeast or the East Coast and you're thinking of moving out to Portland or just checking it out, feel free to drop a line below and let me know you're going to be in town. I can give you some recommendations. And if you are going to look for homes in the area, just make sure to sign up for my headhunters list, because it's really going to give you all of the options available to you. A lot of the times people will tell me that they didn't find the home on Zillow or Redfin, and it was actually a home that I had found through my headhunting services. Now, we're going to get into some tips and tricks to deal with the different types of weather that we can see in the Portland, Oregon area. Let's start off with winter. Here's 3 hacks for Portland, Oregon winters. The first one is skylights. Skylights are a beautiful way to bring in light, and it's also a great way to experience the pattering of the rain, whether the skylight's in your kitchen or your bedroom. I personally have owned a home where the kids' bedroom had 2 skylights in their bedroom, and they said it felt like a castle, and when they fell asleep at night, the rain pattering against the skylights would lull them to sleep, and they just absolutely loved it. So make sure you get the good quality Velux skylights, because the older skylights do tend to leak, and if there's one thing you don't want in a place that rains a lot is a leaking roof or a susceptible roof. Now that leads into my next tip for winter months, is to get all the sunlight you can. Earlier in the video I mentioned that people tend to want to stay indoors, but you don't want to get seasonal depression or anything like that, and because our sunset does go down a lot earlier than you might be used to, getting out and enjoying the random blue sky days that we might have in the winter is just one way to enjoy the weather. Now, my final tip or trick, and this one's kind of a funny one that I do with the kids, is that some people will have rainy day funds, but if you had a rainy day fund in the Portland area, you would probably be broke. So one thing to recraft it as is to either have a lightning day fund or to have a snow day fund. So like all the coins you find in your pockets, or maybe you just have a small little fund set aside to have fun or whatever, and you only spend it on a certain occasion. I always like to say that my jar full of coins goes towards a lightning day, where there's lightning outside. You know, obviously we're not going to go send the kids out into the lightning storm, but maybe we go out and go to a bookstore while there's lightning outside, and then we come back and read books while the thunder's rolling through. Because lightning is really not that common compared to places like Idaho or the East Coast. I remember being in South Carolina, and these massive lightning storms would roll through. So lightning is a really cool occurrence when it does happen in our area. It's not all that common, and honestly, if there's one thing that I wish Portland had more of, it would be those cool lightning storms that roll through, where you can sit under a covered front porch and just watch it roll by and experience the awesome power of Mother Nature. And the big thing to remember with freak events in the Oregon area is that just because they don't usually happen, you always want to be prepared for when they do happen. A good example is I do have an all-wheel drive vehicle, because one time we had a pretty bad snow and ice storm. Because I like to go the extra mile for my clients, I did take my all-wheel drive vehicle out, and I picked this client up who was afraid to look at homes in the ice or to drive in the ice, and we were still able to accomplish all of our home tours because I drive in the snow and the ice quite frequently, being a snowboarder, and I don't really see the ice or the snow as a problem as long as you're doing it safely. Like a lot of people that grow up in the Midwest know that snow isn't that big of an issue. Now here's my 3 different tips and tricks for living in Portland during the summer months, because while we do typically have a pretty temperate climate, and honestly we're nicely inundated by the Pacific weather, where you see California's got very modest temperature where it's almost always even. Portland actually has a lot of that similar effect. More so Seattle, which is right there on the bay. It's got the Olympic National Forest kind of protecting it. Portland's tucked in behind the coastal mountain range, and we're in the Willamette Valley, so we don't quite have the same always temperate weather as, say, a place like California. That coastal mountain range does kind of create a buffer from the weather blanket that the ocean creates, but we do have a fairly regulated temperature. But the summers can get hot. I said earlier that we had 115-degree weather. So one hack to keep in mind is to look into a heat pump system or a mini split system for your home. These are high efficient systems. Mini splits specifically can cool off your master bedroom or cool off your living room, and you can specifically and efficiently let the system know where you want the cool air to be going rather than cooling down an entire house. Mini splits are especially effective for smaller contained units. So if you're living in a condo or something, a mini split can typically cool down an entire home. Another tip for the summer months, and this can really go for any season of the Portland weather, is that always dress for the unexpected. So that means maybe wear a light raincoat if there's a small forecast for clouds, because especially as the weather is transitioning from one season to another, you can experience 80-degree blue weather sky, followed by 60-degree windy and rain, and then a hailstorm, and then it gets back up to a 70-degree day to finish off. I mean, that's just one example of the bipolar weather that we can see in the Portland area. And if anybody is from this area, they will definitely know that you can have a huge variety of different weather patterns just within one day. So always expect the unexpected. Now, the last tip for the summer months and even the spring months is that while I said in the winter people tend to stay indoors and stay inside, and you want to go outside as much as possible when we do have those nice days, Portland summers have a ton of nice days, and a lot of those restaurants that tend to stay contained during the rainy weather open up for the nice blue weather. So you'll have nice outdoor patios at your favorite coffee shop. You'll have a nice patio for your pub. So I would really take advantage of that brief 3-month period where a lot of restaurants and stuff will recreate themselves for those nice sunny months where rain is almost an absolute zero possibility. Now, I don't want to leave spring or fall out of this, so we're going to give those seasons one little tip or trick each. For the spring, I would come out during the late March to mid-April time period. I mean, you can never quite predict when the cherry blossoms are going to go off, but they usually come in such nice and beautiful fashion. And so the waterfront park in downtown has these cherry blossoms that will line, and it just attracts so many people every year. So that would be one great time to visit the Portland, Oregon area. Now for my fall tip, this one is going to be about making sure your home is winterproof. Always in the fall time, make sure that you are preparing for a deep freeze if it hits. A lot of new construction actually has the pipes out of the crawl space, so buying new construction, you don't really need to focus on de-winterizing your home as much. But with a lot of your old homes, the plumbing and stuff is down in the crawl space or in the exposed basement, because during the winter and during those freezes that do happen, we get them infrequently enough that you hear about a lot of pipes bursting when we go into those rare cold spells. Just this last year, for example, we had a cold snap that froze the place over for about 7 days. And the big thing, if anybody's tracking insurance right now, is that with all of California's wildfires, insurance rates have really gone up, and you really want to do as much as possible to ensure that you're not making a claim on your insurance, because at this time, insurance really is coming at a slight premium. Now, thanks for watching my video today. I really hope you learned something new. Drop a comment down below if you think I missed something or if I was not quite correct on something. I'm more than happy to be wrong. And feel free to subscribe to watch the next video coming up. I drop videos every Friday evening at 6 p.m. So make sure that you are subscribed and have that notification bell so that you can see my weekly video drops. Watch this video next, and I will see you next week.